Welcome back to our Succession podcast. I'm Gerri. I'm here with Savannah. This week we're talking about Season 4, Episode 7, Tailgate Party. It's the night before the election.
This feels like the night before Christmas, but like the Succession version. I'm just so excited.
Yeah, everyone's very excited. I loved a lot of the details about this party, like the fancy little cheeseburger sliders and the gentrified pigs in a blanket.
The kettle corn.
The kettle corn. Yeah, the fact that this election that seems to be very fraught for a lot of people in the country definitely kind of feels similar to the 2016 and 2020 elections in a lot of ways. But for these people, I mean, supposedly they are from, both sides of the political spectrum. There's a couple little jokes in there about libtards and Nazis, and we got all kinds here. But for all of them, it's not real, there's no stakes for them.
Like, it feels very similar structurally to the 2016 election, but I don't know anyone who is having a fun little party like this for the 2016 election. As you said, everyone was scared.
The Democratic candidate, Jimenez, is apparently up 4 points, which feels nerve-wracking to be like, oh, you're up in the polls. But yeah, I could also see there being kind of some 2020 parallels with a potential, recount nightmare and the sort of civil unrest that we got some allusions to in this episode with whatever was going on in Arizona. But for all the people in this penthouse, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't affect them.
No, I think we're definitely going to get some more real-life parallels. I noted in the trailer there is kind of the implication that they may be calling the election early, which felt very familiar.
I think that's probably going to be a bulk of the next episode, is like ATN making some kind of early call in some kind of pivotal state for Mencken, and I bet Roman being probably involved in that. At the beginning of this episode, in the cold open, there's a scene between Rava and Kendall where she brings up their daughter Sophie, and this was really interesting because just from watching the show, the implication is that she's adopted because she's like South Asian, she's not white, but it's never been brought up by anyone in the show, which makes sense. No one's ever going to be like, you're not white daughter, Kendall. Although he might need the reminder.
Honestly, it might help. Your daughter, he kind of stares at you, yet she's not white.
So yeah, I liked bringing it up in a way that felt natural here and also maybe bring some personal stakes to it for Kendall, although he definitely doesn't see that through very much in this episode, at least.
This is the only glimpse we get all episode at anyone who is actually going to be affected by the election, and I thought it was a great choice to make it the cold open and give it this weight, even though it does not come up again at all. And I'm not sure it's going to come up again at all this season. Robin, the kids may be at the funeral, but I could also see them not being there at all and it not actually being mentioned again, which is pretty sad.
This could be it for them. I mean, we're at that point now when we might be seeing the last of certain characters. I'm not sure. I didn't hear anything casting-wise if the kids were in this season. But yeah, if they are, probably at the funeral. So we'll see. At the end of this scene, too, Kendall says that he's doing it all for his kids.
Where have we heard that before?
Right. Hi, Logan. We missed you.
It doesn't even make any sense whatsoever. Like, you're trying to keep ATN.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. You have enough money. You have provided for your kids. They'll never have to work if they don't want to. So you did it. You can stop now.
You can stop. What does this do for your kids? Can you just give me a short little outline, Kendall, before you go back to pretending to exist? No? Okay, you're gone.
So the major plot of this episode is that Kendall's definitely back on maneuvers to block the Gojo deal, and this time he's trying a regulatory approach and pulling some political strings. Shiv is fully Team Lucas and kind of feeding him info throughout the episode. And the big reveal in this episode is that Gojo's streaming numbers are fake. They are heavily inflated. So that explains a lot of why Matsson was so desperate for this deal to go through. He even said he kind of wants to drown it out so that nobody will pay attention to this. And we know that kind of the reason why a Waystar and Gojo merger made sense in the first place was because Gojo apparently is like a technically good streaming platform, but Waystar has more of an impressive content library. So if he's able to acquire Waystar, then maybe he will get those, streaming numbers to go up because more people will want to pay for this service. So totally makes sense why he wants it to happen and happen fast.
Yeah, I love this reveal and then proving time and time again that the kids were right, that Logan was rushing into this deal and there was a lot more to examine here.
Well, I want to say I really like Lucas Matson at this point.
I wasn't completely sold by last episode, I'll admit, but this episode I was just having so much fun with him.
This character is so fun. I'm at the point now where I'm enjoying him just on his own merit as a character. It's not even just as much about what he's bringing out of the other characters. Like, I really enjoyed this scene with just him and Ebba and Oscar. Like, I thought that scene was really fun and really compelling. So I think this character really works, and it was kind of a slow build, but to bring in a new character as a series regular in the last season, kind of a big deal, and they totally sold it. So yeah, good job to everybody, to Alexander Skarsgård. That was probably a little bit intimidating, but I'm having a ball. This is great.
It does seem really intimidating as an actor, but yeah, he's definitely grown on me. I wouldn't say he's one of my favorites at this point, but I'm enjoying him a lot, and I'm glad you brought up Ebba. I find that dynamic really interesting, and I appreciate that they never directly said, oh, they were in a relationship, and now he's harassing her. Like, they did bring it up again in private, but in the interactions between them, it was very much in the subtext. I got more details about his whole thing with her. He apparently sent her hair in addition to blood, which I find even worse than sending someone blood, sending them your hair.
Yeah, I'd rather get blood than hair.
I enjoyed the subtle misogyny we saw between them, and Ebba getting her best deal here, like, as much as she possibly can. She's like, I'm getting out in February, it's fine.
They do kind of have this toxic thing going on where she has a lot of leverage. She probably could walk away at any point if she wanted to, but I think she knows that it's all probably going to go bust, or either way she's planning on leaving, so she's just gonna stick around for a bit. But even though they had these very tense exchanges throughout the episode, towards the end they were kind of like touching each other's arms,
yep,
cozying up a bit. So there's definitely something weird that keeps drawing them to each other, I think.
Yeah, I love that in a dynamic, and I think we have a lot of those on Succession.
The other thing about just revealing that Lucas is not even a coder,
Yeah.
That he just got some tech and that he's maybe the kind of charismatic force behind selling it. I think that Succession is really about the capitalist myth of meritocracy. And people always point out the Roy siblings for this, right? They're Nepo babies, which sure, but it's not just them. Like, Succession is really harsh also about people like Lucas Matson, about people like Logan, even. I think that, even someone who's self-made, we see what that means to actually reach the top in this system. The kind of behavior, the lying, the cheating, the bullying, the criminality that our system rewards. You don't get to the top because you're the smartest or the best or you deserve it, So I think this is just a really great reveal all around.
Exactly. It's a lot of luck. It's being a white guy. It always seems to be a white guy who this happens to. And there are always other people behind them who are actually doing the work.
And the points that Kendall and Roman keep bringing up to discredit Matson. So, they find out that he was faking numbers this episode. Okay, well, who did we see do that last week? Kendall. Right? They even kind of go head to head about that. Also, Lucas is harassing a female employee who he had a past relationship with and sending her items. Who's that? Roman. It's so kind of clear cut, but I really love it.
Yeah, I thought the scene with Kendall and Roman going out on the deck to talk to Ebba was so creepy, just the way she's going out for a smoke, and they both very deliberately follow her, but like slowly.
Yeah, the way Roman was like peering through the window at her before going out.
This is our moment, guys. Look how she's being mistreated by this guy.
Let's just spring in on that vulnerability right there.
It was a great choice. I'm glad. I mean, they commented on the numbers thing, but not the sexual harassment parallel. It was just, you get it.
Yeah, you totally get it. It doesn't really need to be drawn attention to. It's always kind of the background of a lot of Succession is just the rampant misogyny. It's interesting that Ebba told them, though. You know, she kind of teased like, oh, like I'm going to give you the details, but evidently she did, so.
I think she and Lucas both enjoy playing with each other is the impression I'm getting.
They're kind of hot. I know they're toxic, but.
They're kind of hot, we can say it.
The confrontation between Lucas and Kendall, I'm calling him Lucas now because I stan, so I've just made the shift. I have to say that when he said, your numbers are gay, my reaction was basically the exact same as Kendall's, where I said, what? Because he was really hitting that accent, and it's just like, did he say gay?
It's such a third grade insult. Or kindergarten, really. Your numbers are gay? That is... Did you just say that? I laughed out loud when he said this.
Me too. And then he just doubled down. He did like a little effeminate mocking voice. And then Kendall was very earnestly like, that's kind of homophobic, man.
Yeah.
One of the best scenes.
I will say that while I was enjoying the episode up to this point, I was waiting for, that Succession scene that just makes you feel insane. And this was the first scene that did that for me. I was in the audience of all the party people who stopped their conversations completely to stare at this.
What are you even talking about, None of this is real. As Kendall said last week, it's enough to make you lose your faith in capitalism.
I want to ask, who do you think won this interaction?
I would say Kendall slightly, because at least he didn't say your numbers are gay. I admit I think that's hilarious. Personally, if somebody said that, I would think that that's really funny, but I don't think it wins in front of this particular audience. I mean, he's such a shit poster.
He really is. I will say, I think Kendall made way better points, but he was more visibly rattled. I feel like Lucas maintained so much dignity, even while he was saying, the stupidest insult ever, which was amazing.
Gay. You can't tell them how much I'm laughing. I thought that scene was so funny.
I've never seen you this happy.
Yeah, he had a lot more chill. I mean, Kendall was definitely letting it get to him, and the way that Lucas was just kind of reclined in that window and then leapt up over the couch and pulled him into a hug and kissed his neck also. Lucas, I think your numbers are gay.
He was high.
He was very high. And he was just vaping in their apartment the whole time.
What a guy.
At the end of the episode, Kendall pulls out the acquisition Uno reverse card and says, what if Waystar acquires Gojo? Let's run it all the way back. I think the way this show is really kind of circling the drain with this business stuff is very purposeful. I mean, they're like, let's go back to the original deal at the end of season 3. Are we even going to see it all the way through at this point with the rest of this season?
I would love to have a decision. I want to know after all this.
That's my main kind of takeaway is like, how much of this are we actually going to see before the show just ends,
I was really feeling the cyclical nature of the show in this episode. I think this is the first time where I started to feel tired of the business dealings, and I started to understand a little why Jesse chose to end it at this point. It makes me sad to be like, no, I want to keep enjoying the business shit forever, but we are really going so far back. And with Kendall betraying his siblings as well, because it's his favorite, it's just very circular.
I think it does feel like the right time, and that was probably influencing a lot of the writing decisions of this season. Maybe they would have done things differently if they weren't thinking maybe this is the last season. But I like seeing things kind of progress in a personal way for a lot of the characters in a way that does feel like we're getting closure, like we're getting real movement. So I think that makes up for the fact that the business stuff just keeps kind of circling round and round because, none of it really matters. I mean, what matters to me, I guess, is how it will end. I feel like it can't end while Kendall and Roman still have this co-CEO thing going on. Something with that has to change.
Yeah, I feel like it might be just one of them.
Ooh, I really would not have expected going into the season that it would end with only one of them being CEO. I don't know. I mean, it would probably be kind of antithetical to the show if Waystar just got destroyed and went down in flames, because I think part of the show is that this stuff just keeps persisting. So that's probably not going to happen. That would also feel like kind of a good ending in a way, is like a destroy the company, destroy the legacy. But I don't know how I feel about it ending with like Kendall being the CEO, you know?
Specifically Kendall, how would you feel about it ending with Roman being CEO?
Definitely not. I would actually prefer Kendall over Roman.
Yeah. I don't want any of them to be CEO, as I think I've said, because I want them to be happy. But thematically, Kendall feels more fitting than Roman.
Although seeing how much he wants it right now, I mean, maybe it's that, is it Henry the, what's the Shakespeare thing? Henry the Eighth?
There are multiple Shakespeare plays about men named Henrys.
Well, the one that Jeremy Strong keeps referencing.
Richard III is what?
Richard III, that's what I said. Henry the Eighth, Richard III. Yeah, I mean, that quote that Jeremy Strong keeps, bringing up for this season about how you get what you wanted, but you had to destroy yourself to get it. Yeah, I mean, that definitely signals like a Kendall CEO endgame. We still have a couple episodes left, though, so... And it would just feel kind of unstable if it ended with one of them being CEO in, like, the last episode, you know? Like, how long do we think that continues after the end of the show?
I could see them doing the kind of thing where maybe the CEO question is resolved in the penultimate episode and the finale is a bit quieter and more settled. I will say I don't actually like the Richard III comparison. Just my own little gripe here. Richard III was famously very deformed and everyone hated him. He was not supposed to, become king, but he lied and deceived and fought his way to the top. Kendall is in a very different position in that he was always promised this position and then had it snatched away. I think that creates a very different vibe for your rulership, even if the ending is the same.
Absolutely. That's really good context that I didn't know. Thank you, English major.
You're welcome. Occasionally we're useful.
Also during this episode, Roman is doing the bidding of the Mencken campaign, which right off the bat, interesting that they're calling him direct and asking him to do things for them when he works for ATN, when he's the CEO of the company.
There's a lot we seem to have missed.
I assume we're going to get some backfill next week about what exactly that relationship has been and whether he's been involved with them for longer than, like, since his dad died. He seems very clearly invested in this. I mean, he plays it cool whenever someone asks him, like the executive last week, he said to her, "Oh, everybody hates Mencken, I hate Mencken." And then in this episode, when Kendall says, fuck Mencken, Roman goes, "Fuck Mencken." Fuck Mencken. And Kendall goes, "No, not like that." No, he says it would be good to maintain the relationship. And Kendall's like, "Oh, good point." He got talked out of that very quickly, Kendall.
Very quickly.
It's interesting that Roman seems to be genuinely invested, but also is hiding it.
I mean, it makes sense that he would, because his siblings have more liberal leanings than he does. And also the fact that he's been working on this probably with his dad for so long is not something they would really want to hear. But also, Roman seems very gay, Mencken seems very gay, and he's hiding the fact that he's talking regularly to Mencken and his team.
This whole episode, I was like, Roman, he's not gonna fuck you. Oh, wait, no, he is.
I think he already has, and I think the reason we haven't seen Roman's connections to Mencken is because Succession doesn't do sex scenes.
Meeting up in, like, Ohio or whatever, wherever politicians go. Meeting up in Cleveland on the weekends.
That feels like a classic, like, closeted gay place to meet.
In this episode, Roman is trying to get Connor to drop out, because Connor actually, 4, 5, 6%? That's big.
It's actually pretty sweet to see him celebrating the small victories so much.
The conheads love him in Alaska. That kind of makes sense. Kind of libertarian bent. I could see it.
Yeah.
Sarah Palin's a conhead. I just love the fact that Connor's silly ambitions to become president, which have roots all the way back at the end of season 1, right? Was when he first decided he wanted to do this. That could have been something that, they easily could have dropped anywhere along the way. But the fact that it's kind of just been building slowly and that they keep kind of going back to that well, and that it is now, like, Connor is a spoiler in a pivotal election. and being pressured by a family member to drop out. Like, that's so fun. I just think that's such a fun plot choice that, like, really has been building up through all 4 seasons.
Yeah, he could actually turn the tide of the selection. He's not going to win, but I think this is the most impact we could have expected him to have, and it's still more than anyone expected him to have.
The whole scene with, like, trying to negotiate the ambassadorship position was so fun. Love to see Maxim Pierce back in the action. He's so funny. When he was like, frankly, we're insulted by the Mogadishu suggestion. Also, Roman, don't send your brother to Mogadishu.
He was willing to send his brother anywhere just because it made sense.
He knew they got a better offer and he still started with Mogadishu.
Where do you think Connor should have gone if he did choose?
Slovenia, honestly. Slovenia's beautiful. I think Willow would love it. He maybe should have said yes to that. I mean, that would have got him into Europe. That's what he wanted, right? You know, Berlin by Christmas. But, I mean, ultimately, he was right to reject it because, as Willa said, you know, that's going to help Mencken win. And her family, her woke family member, is not a fan of fascism.
Yeah, her woke family and friends. That was an interesting little tidbit about Willa.
She was like, I don't care, but my friends don't like that fascist guy. And then there's this great scene between Roman and Gerri. So he fired her twice in 1 week. And both times he just tried to smooth it over like nothing ever happened. Did not ever apologize or react in a mature way at all. So she just takes her leverage and uses it to get out, and cannot blame her for that at all.
Yeah, this was a really smart move on Gerri's part. Roman is like, she knows I'm joking, right? I don't have to say it. Yes, you do have to fucking say it, Roman.
I love how we speak directly to Roman. We're like, you, Roman, listen to me. This isn't you.
I found it interesting that he also expected Frank to maybe smooth things over. I couldn't tell if he actually talked to Frank or he just assumed Frank would smooth it over.
Yeah, I wonder, because, like, for Roman to go to Frank is quite the desperate move.
Roman has not accepted that his actions count. They have actual consequences.
Yeah, you know, that actually reminds me of something that Kieran Culkin said about his approach to playing Roman. Really, ever since the pilot episode, it was kind of the first choice that he made with the character, is that this is a guy that has never faced any consequences in his entire life. And that definitely comes through, that he thinks he can just say and do whatever he wants. Someone will clean up his mess. It'll be okay. It'll work out. So, yeah, seeing him face these actual consequences that, you know, Gerri's had enough. She doesn't need this. She doesn't need to be fired every other week and then, you know, humiliated and try to bring her back on.
He's like still making sexual comments to her.
I know, he literally brought up jerking off again in front of her. Roman, you're so dumb.
He's so dumb. And like, you could see in his face as soon as she walked away, he's like, fuck, I fucked that up so badly, but he can't stop himself.
You really want to just grab these guys and be like, you could say like a couple sentences to her and probably fix the situation. But because she cares about you, she does.
Yeah.
And you know, what she said at the end, I could have got you there. But no.
I think Gerri was out at this point, but Roman could have salvaged some dignity in some part of the relationship if he had handled this differently.
If he had talked to her sooner after, you know, the firing, I think he definitely could have saved things by just apologizing sincerely, maybe. But is this the end of Roman and Gerri? Are we going to see a lot more from them?
I could see maybe a short, like, one-line interaction between them at the funeral, maybe. But that's the most I would expect at this point. I think Gerri's out.
I think so, too. And I think this might be one of the first kind of major relationship endgames that we're going to see on the show. And I like how, like, satisfying I found it. I mean, it ended in a really sad place, but that I could have got you there, but no, was just such a great final line, you know? I could have done it, I did care, but it's too late, you know?
Yeah.
We could have had it all, Roman.
We love how we could have had it all relationship where you could see the potential.
Kendall and Stewie.
Just, what?
I said Kendall and Stewie, yeah.
Gerri is Roman's Stewie. It's not how I expected the relationship to end, but you can see it all developed very organically.
And then Roman, right after this,
yes,
he takes his nervous energy, his angst, he runs off and tries to very aggressively lock down Connor, is very mean to him, very mean to Willa. all in service of this, Mencken thing. And I will say, Jerry Kellman, Jared Mencken, they didn't have to give them the same name, but they did.
Look, Roman lost his mommy. He can still make his daddy happy today.
Oh, it's so dark for him. Oh boy. I think Roman is kind of servile, to use a Shiv term. He wants to be useful. He wants to kind of be able to accomplish something for someone else a lot of the time. I mean, he doesn't really put his own agenda forward as much. He really is always kind of, pulling for other people in one way or another.
I think he still doesn't know what exactly he wants. It's not something he's ever thought about. He's very much in the habit of, I feel bad about myself, so I'm going to do something for someone else. Which isn't in and of itself bad. Like, that can be a genuinely healthy thing to do. It's not often in the way that Roman does it.
I loved in this scene, though, how when Connor said, there's one person here who, respects me, and then behind him, blurry in the background, you could see Lucas pointing to himself. Great character.
Such a little shithead.
And then when Connor walks away, Lucas is like, you've got my vote.
I love how Lucas is always there for Roman's explosions.
And they didn't interact at all, which is interesting. Roman was just like, I'm not getting into it.
Kendall definitely felt slightly more grounded this episode, just relative to last week. And I found it notable that he does see Roman's little breakdown and tells him to back off of Connor.
Yeah, that was sweet. That was a good kind of big brother thing. Big episode for Tom and Shiv. So at the beginning of the episode, they are back together, which I should have seen the writing on the wall right there, that it wasn't going to end well for them. And they're saying we're gonna tell people that we're together. But I definitely bought a lot of Tom Shiv stocks last week, so I was in denial. I was like, we're back! We're so back! It's so over.
I don't know that it's over, but I was expecting more fallout.
And it definitely starts to fray during the party. So Shiv has really never been protective of Tom's career and has always been very willing to kind of throw him under the bus in different situations. So this is just one more instance of that. But especially the way that it came right after last episode when he said that his career is really important to him. After that moment of honesty.
Shiv, her own career is not particularly stable, I would say, and she is always going to put herself first. It's not a good look for her to be protecting her husband, and I think she just resents it too much that, he uses her partly as a ladder, even though she knew that going into it. They both knew going into it the transactional nature of their relationship on both sides and resent the other for it.
I think this is another instance where you just want to grab her by the ears and be like, you could have one short conversation with Tom during the party and probably avoid this. You could pull him aside and be like, okay, so Mattson might want to fire you. He's saying that, but we can probably get around it. Or do you want to discuss, if she had given him a heads up and just shown that she cared, or that she was willing to kind of take that step, that probably would have made a difference, but
she's not willing to show that vulnerability. I don't think she was actually committed to firing Tom. It's just, same with the jail thing. She'll say to Logan, please, not Tom. But to Tom's face, she's like, oh, I don't care. Why do you keep talking to me about this?
Yeah, I was actually protecting you by doing that, which is it's kind of true, but you have to express those things privately to people. If you're going to play these games in public, you gotta make sure that you're on the same page to be a true power couple. Come on, Shiv.
They act like they had this agreement and they don't need to talk about it. With the infidelity in season 1, they kept saying they have an agreement.
And they don't know what the terms of the agreement are, and they never really agreed to it. Yeah, it's messy. They just think that they don't have to actually talk about anything.
It's so inspiring to see people so much older than you who are so much worse at everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's very relatable, as, frustrating as it is. I totally understand it, to be bringing that up would feel a little emotionally difficult, so I'm just gonna not do it, and maybe it'll be fine, and then it blows up in your face.
I mean, people are attracted to people who are similar to them, so it makes sense that someone who doesn't want to talk about those things would find a partner who also doesn't want to talk about those things.
And then it all blows up in this scene on the balcony. I loved that they were having this huge blowout fight in front of a bunch of windows. just wildly gesturing, yelling at each other. And it was never even really brought up, which was kind of funny, but you know everyone saw that.
And I love how they were kind of facing away from the window at one point and not even looking at each other. Like, it reminded me of Dwight and Angela on The Office, how they were secretly dating, so they would just stand a few feet away from each other, not look at each other, and talk. Like, that is somehow
we're being
secret.
so subtle.
Yeah, they did that, and then they just kind of gave up and were openly yelling at each other face to face.
A great fight, because I think that up to a point, I think everything they said was like emotionally true for them. You know, even if it maybe wasn't the full thing, like most of what they said, I think, was like a pretty good read on the other person. And there were a couple things that I didn't even necessarily think about until it was said. So when Tom said, "You were going to see me go to prison," and Shiv says, "You offered because you're servile." You know, that's true. And during season 3, I think that we gave Shiv a really hard time during season 3, and I don't think we were wrong to do that, but he did offer.
He did offer, and he just betrayed her. Like, he got quiet about it and was like, okay, you know what, I'm just gonna do my own little thing instead.
And when Tom said, "I have given you endless approval and it doesn't fill you up because you're broken." You're not her dad, Tom. It's going to be different. You know, she can't like fill in what's missing in one relationship for another relationship. But also, you know, it would be frustrating to love someone who was like so focused on, you know, chasing after approval from someone that they're clearly probably not going to get it from, and just ignoring the fact that you do love them. So
this fight was genuinely unpleasant to listen to for me, in that way where, like, in every relationship, you know, there are these things that you don't say to the other person because you want to maintain your relationship and not hurt them, so you like kind of put it down and justify it. And here it came out in this very ugly way where it becomes a universal statement. Like, you take the one emotion you had about the situation, as you mentioned, and you just make it the whole thing. That was all I was doing. I never cared about you. Like how Shiv says she didn't want to hurt his feelings, and that's why she said yes to marry.
yeah.
Or because her dad almost died, which is, I'm glad you brought up, like, things you weren't thinking about before. I didn't think about the fact that her dad has now died, and that was when Tom proposed, when he almost died the first time.
Yeah.
It was a very happy moment in the show when she said yes to the proposal, but those things were also part of it. And here she's so angry she's making it, no, that's all it ever was. It was a lot to watch, and I appreciate how immediately miserable they both looked after the conversation, because it never actually feels good to say those things. Like 5 seconds later, you're like, no, that was bad, and I just feel like garbage now.
It does not feel good. I think it reaches a clear breaking point when Tom says, "You're maybe not a good person to have children," which clearly is just packed with dramatic irony, because we know that Shiv's pregnant. Shiv knows. Tom doesn't know. We also know that, you know, Caroline said that to Shiv. I don't think Tom knows that.
I gasped out loud when he said this. This, I think, was the most cutting remark of that entire conversation.
I mean, this was just getting at, like, her deepest insecurity.
Yeah.
In a way that I don't even know if he knows it's her deepest insecurity, you know?
I don't think in this moment he believes that. There are points when he's like, yes, Shiv has some vulnerabilities. She does genuinely like me. She genuinely is sad about things. And here he's just like, you know what? No, I was wrong. There's none of that there. There's nothing.
The fact that she didn't throw it back in his face that she is pregnant, I thought she was going to when he said that.
I didn't think she was, actually. It's just such a vulnerable thing to share.
But I could see it kind of just getting to an emotional point where you don't even think and you just throw it out there. But the fact that she didn't is, I think, the more interesting choice. Because now it's like this huge, like, really weighted thing for her to tell him if she does, you know? They will both be thinking of this moment.
I had some more positive anticipation of that moment before this episode, and now I'm like, God, that could be a horrible conversation to have. I did find it interesting in this conversation. She wasn't really defending herself at all. He brought up the children thing twice, actually, earlier in the conversation. He mentions, oh, you were only planning to be with me for like 4 years or something like that, when we know she's having his baby. You know, she could have aborted it, but she seemed to want this to work out and have the baby with him. But she was very much on the offense in this conversation.
After this remark is, I think, when things get a lot more like dishonest, because then Shiv says, I don't even like you, I don't even care about you, which is not true, I think.
Yeah.
On just a very, deeply emotional level, not true. Kind of what they were saying before, I think they at least believed what they were saying. This one, I think she's just trying to say the most hurtful thing that she can think of to say to Tom. And it might hit. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he sees through it or if it does land for him. And then she says, you don't deserve me, you never did, which was a very direct callback to their insane dirty talk in the season 3 episode Chianti Shire when she says, you don't deserve me.
Yeah.
Ah!
She was thinking it him. I liked how she also called him a hick in this scene.
A hick, you're a conservative hick.
I feel like his insults to her were way more convincing than the other way around.
I agree. I think that if we're gonna say who won, quote unquote, I think Tom kind of got his claws in a bit deeper.
Yeah, though I do appreciate that the insults in this scene were all very simple. Like, Succession has been noted for having such clever, layered insults, but these are two people having a very heated argument, and they're just saying things like, you fucked me for a fucking ladder, I don't like you.
Right, it was very emotionally raw. They weren't trying to be clever. Just stripped of all of that.
I loved how they were then shown to be sleeping in separate bedrooms in the same house. I would want to leave, my marital home after a conversation like that. Just, they're rich, stay in a hotel for a night, get some space, but they're both like, no, this is my house, and just sadly sleeping in separate beds.
Not getting to sleep very easily, obviously. Both looking, I don't know, especially Tom maybe looking a little lonesome.
Yeah, a little guilty, maybe.
Maybe things are super broken, but maybe we'll take a couple little steps back together in the last 3 episodes here. I don't know. I mean, they said a lot of things that they can't take back, but
this definitely didn't have a last conversation feel the way the Roman and Gerri conversation did.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're probably going to get them, interacting in at least a couple more episodes. A couple more notes from this episode. Do we want to talk about Greg?
I do and I don't,
So he's firing people. He's just so shameless, he'll do anything. The way he was trying to kind of ingratiate himself into like the Swedish circle was kind of funny. I liked when Oscar just like blew the vape right into his face. Rude, but funny.
I'm glad he did that. Greg has no loyalties whatsoever. He just wants a warm bed, He'll just gravitate towards whoever seems to be the most powerful person in the room at a given moment. And it was kind of annoying to see, like, Lucas doesn't even like Greg, as Greg reiterated in this episode. But as a white guy, he just, he heard the misogynistic conversation happening and just joined in really quickly and easily.
Right, when Greg started yelling Eva with them. Oh my god, Greg, you piece of shit. I feel like Greg's just gonna keep doing this for the rest of the show and then it'll just end.
Yeah, there's nothing that's gonna happen with Greg. I've heard theories. He's just gonna be Greg, cousin Greg, to the end.
I can't really see anything else happening with him. He'll just kind of settle into some upper management position at the company and stay there forever.
I do feel like this season they're being less subtle about the fact that Greg sucks and is like not a nice person, so I do appreciate that.
He's such a piece of shit. And he just has no like redeeming qualities. Like a lot of the other characters are also at least as big pieces of shit, but at least they're also like kind of funny or charming or whatever, or they have a heart or relationships that they care about.
Greg inspires other people to be funny. They make funny jokes about him.
That's enough about Greg. I'm sick of talking about him. And then the other little thread that got brought up here was the funeral. Roman decides at the end that he wants to deliver the keynote address, the big, speaking gig at the funeral. Interesting that he wants to. I thought that might be the case when they were talking about it at the beginning, that Roman might kind of spring on it. I have a slight suspicion that it might not happen for one reason or another, though, just because I could see things falling apart in some way before then. But if it does, I mean, if Kieran needs another Emmy reel, he's got it in the bag then. I mean, he already has like 3 Emmy reels for this season, but if he needs another one, I guess he's got it. I don't know. I have a feeling that we might not ever see the speech.
Yeah, it is interesting that they had this conversation 2 episodes before the funeral.
Right.
That kind of has a vibe of something bad is going to happen, possibly between the siblings next episode. I also found it interesting how Roman says this at the end of the episode. Like, it feels like a slightly self-sabotaging move after he's already booked up with Gerri, just fully dig into the grave.
Again, to speak directly to Roman, are you in a place right now where you think you want to publicly speak in front of hundreds of people? I want to see it. I hope it does happen, but woof.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, let's do our segments. It's time for Burn of the Week.
That's not a good retort. Don't fucking laugh at that.
My Burn of the Week was when Lucas said, "Nothing happens in New York that doesn't happen everywhere."
Of course it was.
Not to call out Savannah, but longtime listeners know that Savannah's a New Yorker. And a few weeks ago, you were watching the Angels in America miniseries. And there's a scene where Pryor's apartment gets destroyed by the angel. Spoilers for Angels in America. And then he says, "Oh no, my security deposit." And then you said to me about that scene, "Typical New Yorker." And I said, "Savannah, my dear, everywhere has security deposits."
There's nothing I can say.
That was like a moment of just like, I really just like collected all of the patience that I possess, which is not much, and typed back. Did you know that other people have security deposits too? Love a dig on New York.
How's the mass transit, by the way, in St. Paul, Jenny?
Okay, the one thing that New York has is that you guys have a subway system that works, and like, does any other city in the US really have that? Have like good mass transit that most people use? No.
Thank you.
But I think he was also speaking like globally. So yeah, New York is like a global city, but it's not the only one that has good mass transit.
Yeah, definitely globally, it's not true. I have heard that the mass transit in Tokyo is better in some ways.
Yeah, I think it probably is. What was your burn of the week?
So, Kendall said, could we get him down so we can sell it on a real level without lobbyists and Shiv interrupts due process?
Yeah, that was a good line.
In this episode, everyone is disregarding the due process, including Shiv. But it was nice to get this little call out at the beginning of what they're actually doing here.
Yeah, for sure. I was just like, let's use all of our back channels. It's fine. We don't need to do all that annoying legal things. Let's do Candy Baby.
Ugh. Hot. Ugh.
My candy baby for this episode was Nate.
Ooh, nice.
This is not something I felt about Nate previously. In his previous appearances, he's been a little desperate, a little too into Shiv, trying too hard, but it seems like his time away has been good for him. He was in top form here. He's grown a little stubble. He was being very kind to Kendall while also not letting Kendall walk all over him. He left the party early, which is a hot guy move.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm the only one who wanted to fuck him here. Kendall was 100% trying to fuck Nate in this episode.
Yeah, what was going on there? I was kind of suspicious of their, like, alleged friendship until this episode, and then I was like, oh, I see.
Yeah, same.
Something went on there. In Shanghai, you know what happens in Shanghai.
Yeah, that's the saying, right? What happens in Shanghai.
Stays in Shanghai. Good choice. I was trying to pick someone new for Candy Baby since I haven't had any repeats yet. So I was watching it again, being like, who am I feeling? But while I was watching it with that mindset, I kept getting so distracted by Roman's waist and hips, so I'm picking Roman. I'm not going to fight it. Why is his waist so grabbable? Can we get our top minds on that?
It's the tight clothes he wears. It's insane.
The wardrobe department. My hat's off to them. Yeah, my crush on Kieran Culkin has just reached like teenage girl levels. I want posters of him in my bedroom.
Succession should release posters of the cast members, especially like in the style of those teen, Tiger Beat posters.
I need a Tiger Beat Kieran Culkin poster, this 40-year-old father of two.
I would buy all of them.
It's not my fault that he's so hot. Is he still fucking that personal trainer? Because he looks good.
I think he has a new personal trainer now, but maybe he's also fucking this one.
Probably also bending him in half on a yoga mat.
Yep.
Every day at 5 a.m. Let's do best line.
Words are just, nothing. Complicated airflow.
My best line was when Nate said, "I'm not Gil and you're not Logan, and that's a good thing."
I picked the same one.
I thought we might pick the same line this week.
It's the best line.
It was the best line. I would not have expected picking a Nate line just ever, but, you know, they really justified bringing this character back. I thought it was a great appearance from him, and this line was really consistent with his, like, ethical limits that he reached at the end of season 1, right? So he was really genuinely appalled by the deal that Shiv helped make between Logan and Gil, right? He was like, "Who are you?" You know, he thought that was just terrible, and that's kind of what Kendall was trying to do in this episode, was something very similar to that. A lot of the kids have been told that they're not like their dad, but it's usually either intended as an insult or interpreted as one. So it was nice to see it here as being like a positive thing. You're not Logan, and that's a good thing. We can actually break the cycle of corruption. It's possible, but I'm not super optimistic that Kendall will go for that, at least not soon.
Definitely not, based on his reaction to what Nate said here. But I felt the same way with all the talk of who's the most like Logan, both in the show and outside of it. This was a really refreshing line to hear. I don't think that Kendall and Nate were ever super close as friends, and they certainly, by the time the show started, appeared to have grown apart a fair amount. But this is the first time for me as well that I believe that these people were once friends, that Nate knows what kind of dad Logan was and holds genuine affection for Kendall still. Like, that in itself is pretty cool. Kendall had a friend who he didn't completely turn against him.
That's true. Actually, Kendall has friends.
Kendall has friends out of all the siblings.
Out of all the siblings, I mean, like, Connor has Maxim.
Yeah.
But that's a recent friend. He had, like, no friends before he met Maxim.
Maybe it does come back to charisma, kind of also talking about the CEO thing. Rowan pushes people away way too much, and same with Shiv. People like to see vulnerability. It makes them feel trusted and valued.
Yeah, Kendall's definitely able to be, you know, vulnerable with people, sometimes in a slightly weaponized way, but, you know, he knows when he has to do it.
It's his girl coding, weaponized femininity.
Let's do number one boy.
You're my boy. You're my number one boy.
My number one boy this week was Connor. I'm not sure I'm going to have another opportunity where I feel compelled to pick Connor at this point, so I got to seize it when I'm really feeling for him, and I did here. Connor seems to be processing his grief the best out of his siblings, I would say. He's speaking very openly about visiting his father's corpse, which I think is a pretty normal and healthy thing to do at this point, kind of talk to him and process it in that way. The crowning moment of this episode, though, was definitely when he decides not to drop out of the race, despite all this pressure. This show is full of people who are desperate for the respect of people who do not and will never respect them. Connor is like, you know what, I know you guys don't give a shit about me, so I'm going to listen to the one person who does. And that's great. In doing so, he also upholds the democratic process. Does not drop out of the race for some country he's never even visited. And I have to respect him for that.
This was a great episode for him. Yeah, I loved at the beginning when he said he found it consoling that Logan was no longer there.
Yeah.
To just go look at his empty body.
This is probably the most he's gotten to talk to Logan in a long time.
Yeah, you can just sit there and talk to him about his plans or whatever. Do you know I'm polling at 4% in Alaska now, Dad? What do you think about that? Nothing? Huh. It's like you're still with us. My number one boy this episode was Tom.
Oh, wow. I was not expecting this.
You know, I wasn't expecting it either. So Tom is definitely a favorite character of mine from seasons 1 through 3. He feels a little different in season 4, you know, a little more closed off, a little less like he's kind of wearing his heart on his sleeve, a little less vulnerable. And I think part of that is just that he acts different around different people. That's always been an aspect of his character. And after the end of season 3, his relationship with Shiv has really permanently changed. He relates to Shiv in a very different way now. So as the audience, I mean, that's a huge facet of the character. So he seems like kind of a different person at this point, a little more self-assured around Shiv. He's not this kind of obsequious, fawning guy. Why did I say obsequious? Do I think I'm Jeremy Strong? What does that word even mean? Did I use that right? English major.
Let me do a quick Google.
Do a quick Google. I always use words and then I have to Google them immediately afterward to be like, well, what does that mean?
I already forgot the context he said it in. I was distracted by
Tom is
using the
less
word
obsequious. Yeah, obedient or attentive to an excessive or servile degree. Look at me, servile. Look at me. Vocab. Okay, anyway. Yeah, so this was a great Tom episode. I loved how he was like sexting his wife while Greg was firing 100 people via Zoom. Cool, slay. And then the way that he immediately shoved a glass of his shitty wine in Nate's face as soon as he walked into the party, that was a very funny touch because he knew the wine was shitty. There was a waiter walking past with a tray that was mostly champagnes and then one glass of the wine, and he specifically grabbed the wine when he saw Nate and was like, here you go, buddy, drink up, you piece of shit.
He has been waiting for this for so long.
So cunty, I love him. And, he was the one that really wanted to clear the air with Shiv, and as painful as it was for both of them, just like Bitey, I think he got the best of her in the end. He kind of got his claws in a little bit deeper, and she retreated back into dishonesty and kind of protecting herself first. So not a victorious moment, really, a pretty shitty one in the way it made him feel, but something that he maybe wanted and maybe kind of needed to do. And then, of course, just at the end when he was like, everybody get the fuck out of my apartment. Amazing. Bedtime for Bonzo.
This is a very fun episode for Tom.
I love a sleepy guy. We've all been sleepy, okay?
It was just fun having that thread throughout the whole episode.
He's tired, okay?
He's tired, and it really affects everything you do. Not to excuse it, but you can really see it in his actions.
He's just tired. He wants to go to sleep. Oh, we've all been there. So relatable.
I love that choice. I also considered picking Shiv for this episode, which would have been funny.
Married couple slay. Soon to be divorced couple slay. Well, this was a fun episode. We are really getting into the election stuff now. There was an interview, I think it was at the premiere with Jesse Armstrong, where he was asked what the most shocking episode of the season was, and he said, well, I'd like to think they're all shocking. And then he said, well, maybe episode 8, which is next week.
The most shocking part is Jesse offering up more information than was being asked.
He really could have just left it at they're all shocking. My guess is that Roman is gonna pull some very unethical and illegal shenanigans next episode, try calling some state way too early, etc., civil unrest, etc. Maybe he'll fuck Mencken, etc.
He's not gonna fuck Mencken.
You gotta make outlandish predictions, because then, there's nothing to lose. There's no stakes. If you're wrong, you're like, it was a joke. I didn't actually think he was gonna fuck Mencken. But if he does, then we get to come here and just gloat.
Okay, fair. I'll make that bet.
We've been anticipating the election episode for long enough, so
We've been anticipating Mencken reappearing. We've done
It makes
our
me
homework.
feel good that everyone else is excited for Justin Kirk and Mencken to come back too, because I'm like, we're not the only ones that are a little too excited to see this guy again.
Yeah, it was mentioned on the watch this week as well.
And the Prestige TV pod, I don't always agree with the two guys on it, Bill and Sean. I wish we could poach Joanna to be our third. I think she would fit right in on our podcast. But Bill and Sean, I sometimes struggle with their takes. But for some reason, they are both team Roman and Mencken kissing each other on the mouth, as they said this week. Something's in the water.
For some reason, Roman and Mencken is a ship that a bunch of straight men are really super into.
It's so funny. Reddit is obsessed with them, too.
Just from the one scene, everyone, even straight people, got, oh, there is something going on here.
I can only hope we get, at the very least, some very obvious kind of flirty subtext I would be satisfied with. But, yeah, something's going on there. I think that's safe to say. yeah, thanks for joining us this week. We'll be back next week for America Decides. If you enjoy our podcast, you can help us out by hitting like on the video. You can also donate to us on Ko-fi. The link is below. The channel is monetized. We get some ad revenue, but here's the thing that I'm learning. So when you upload a video to YouTube, they ask you to rate it based on how appropriate for advertisers it is, like based on swearing, sexual content, references to drugs, that kind of thing. And I always say, it is acceptable for ads. And then they run the algo and go, no, it's not. And I go, what? That's crazy. I do this every single week. And the thing is, they ask you to rate it to determine how trustworthy you are as a content creator. So
is that true, or do you just make
No, it genuinely is true. It says we will evaluate your first 20 uploads, and if you are consistently good at rating your own content, then we will be less dependent on the algorithm in the future. So I am literally just fucking myself over. But I don't care. I know I'm not going to stop. And to be honest, the system's working the way it's supposed to. They're trying to determine how trustworthy I am, and I'm not trustworthy. So everything's working the way it's supposed to.
We're not meant to get paid.
It's kind of based to be too spicy for ad revenue. But here's the thing, when our videos are fully monetized at about 3,000 views, we only get $12 to $15. And then when it gets the ad unsuitability thing, we get half of that. So we're only sacrificing $6 split between the two of us. I would pay YouTube $3 to say things like Roman's gonna fuck that fascist.
Same.
For instance. So, not a loss to me. And if you guys enjoy our spicy takes, we've been a little tame this one. We might be fine on this one, actually.
Don't say that. You're just tempting fate.
I am tempting fate. I'm going to lie again and be like, it was super appropriate. If you enjoy our spicy takes, you only have to give us $6 to make up for that ad revenue that we are losing. So think of it that way. And we have definitely made up that difference so far from our lovely listeners. So thank you to everyone who has donated so far. Very appreciated.
Yes, it's been lovely to see the gay little numbers come in.
The gay little numbers. And one day we'll actually get the money. My PayPal hold is up in 2 days, so I'll get the Ko-fi donation soon. PayPal thought I was scamming them too. They said, we're not going to give you your money for 20 days. This seems a little suspect. And I said, that's fair. And then you don't get the ad revenue until you make $100, and we're halfway there. So let's go.
Your very controversial Succession podcast. Everyone's like, what is this girl trying to do?
Well, thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week for America Decides, the much anticipated election episode.
Yes, thank you.
God, Twitter must be insane in the Succession universe right now. Almost would be fun.
The glimpses we've gotten at social media in this universe have felt very true to actual social media, which a lot of shows cannot do.
The feeling of the 2020 election on Twitter, the day that Georgia was called? And then also there was a thing with Putin that day, and also the supernatural thing, all happened on the same day.
On the 5th of November.
They invented a new human emotion that day online.
That was the most important day in internet history, I would say, to be
I will
online that day.
I will never forget that day as long as I live. Best day to be on Twitter ever.
I don't think we even knew each other then on that day in 2020, but we both had this...
Oh, we probably didn't. Wow.
But we shared the experience.
We shared it online, ephemerally. Exactly.
Yes.